Hello and welcome everyone. In this video tutorial, we will discuss about some of the common built-in functions that we can utilize to render a template in Django. So we will start off this video by discussing about the render to response function. Then we will discuss about the render function, and in the last we will discuss about the locals. So let's start with the very first topic, that is about render to response function. The render to response is a function that returns an HTTP response object containing the displayed text after rendering a given template using the provided context dictionary. Moreover, this function was part of Django.shortcut module. However, this render to response method is removed from Django version 3 or greater. So if you are using Django version 2 or lower, we can utilize this function to render a template. And just like what we were doing with the help of a render function, we can use this render to response in previous Django versions. But if you are using Django version 3 or higher, we cannot use this function. This function has been deprecated from that particular version. And if you try to use this function in latest version or Django version 3, what will happen? So let us discuss this thing with the help of an example. So for this, what I will do, I will create a view which uses this render to response function. Now, as I told you, this render to response function is a part of Django.shortcuts. So instead of importing render, I will type import Django.shortcuts. Instead of importing render function, I will import the render to response function. So I will write from Django.shortcuts import render to response. And after this, what I will do, I will create a view here. So to create a view, I will create a function with name index, and I will pass request as a parameter to it. Next, what I will do, I will define one context. Now here context will be a complete dictionary. Let me define some set of values in it. Let me define name as Adam, and let me define one more key value pair. So I will define age as 32. And here you can see I have defined two key value pairs in this dictionary, and the name of this dictionary is context. Now in last, what I will do, I will simply return this render to response function, and within this, first thing I will pass is the request. Second thing, we need to specify the template. So my template name is index.html, and then we need to define the context. So I will simply type context, because here context is the dictionary itself, so we don't need to specify this thing in curly brackets. Now, if you are following along from the previous tutorial, you know that I already have this index.html file, and I also have this URL which maps under /index. So now let me run the development server and let's see the result for this. For this, first what I will do, I will activate my virtual environment, and then I will type this command python manage.py run server. This command will run the development server at port number 8000, and here you can see we got this error. Now what this error states, it states that it is an import error and it cannot import this function render to response from this Django.shortcuts module. So why this error has been occurred? Because we are using latest Django version. So if I show you the version, I will type Django admin and then hyphen version. So currently I am using Django version 4.0.6, which is the latest one. And as I told you, this render to response function has been deprecated from Django version 3 and higher. So we cannot use this function here. Instead, we can use the render function. So what is the role of this render function? Now, just like render to response, the render function is also part of Django.shortcuts module, and the role of this render function is same as the role of render to response function. This render function also returns an HTTP object that contains the rendered text after combining the specified template with the context dictionary. So what we can do in such cases when we are using the latest version, instead of using this render to response, we only need to use the render function. So if I replace this render to response with just render, and in the template file, if I use, let me put some text in it. So I have put one heading as user information, Then I will define one unordered list, and within this let me specify the name. Now for name, what we have defined, if I show you here, for name I have simply defined as name only. So I will type name here, and then the next key value pair is age. So I will type age here. Now if I again run the development server, and now let me open slash index page, and here you can see we got our result. User information, name is Adam and age is 32. And these two values we have defined in the view file. Now there will be many instances where we need to perform various calculations and store their results in variable. And we also need to provide those variables to the template. Now declaring and defining multiple variables as context will increase the complexity of the view. However, we can utilize one built-in Python function which is named as locals. Now what this locals function will do, it will help to render all the variables that have been defined in the current scope, and this function returns a dictionary that maps all the local variable names to their values. So let us discuss this thing with the help of an example. So I'm back to my views.py file, and for this example, first what I will do, I will import datetime module. I will remove this context from here, and instead of context I will define multiple variables. So let me define one variable as first name. Let me define its value as James. Let me define another variable as last name. Let me define its value. Let me define age, and let me use this datetime module to fetch the current date time. So I will specify one variable as last login, and what I will do, I will use the datetime module, and in that datetime module we have datetime class, and within the datetime class we have one function with name now. What this now function will do, it will return the current datetime. So what will be stored in this last login variable, it will store the current datetime value. Now, instead of returning context or instead of returning all these variable one by one, what I will do, I will simply define locals here, and here locals is a built-in function. Now let's come back to the index page and let's use these values. So first I will define the first name. Let me define last name as well. Age is already there, and in the last I will define last login. Now if I come back to my URL, index URL, and if I refresh this page, here you can see we got the information. So first name is James, last name is Bond, age is 32, and last login time is this. Now I hope with this you all understand the use of render function, render to response, and the locals built-in function. With this we have come to the end of this tutorial session. Thank you so much for watching this video. We will see you in the next one.